Welcome to my ranking of films that came out in the year 1996, or at least the ones that I've seen. And I can now reveal I have seen 19 films from this particular year, which is less than what we've had in previous instalments, but it is at least a high quality list with one or two exceptions. A quick reminder before we get into it that the top two films today will go through to the eventual grand final of 100 films, where I will be declaring once and for all what the greatest film of all time is. But for now, let's concentrate on 96, and we'll begin with the film that I consider to be the worst that came out in this particular year. This for me is the only bad film in today's ranking. I saw it at the cinema when it first came out. I don't remember being that enamoured to see it. I think my dad was the driving force behind this one. He enjoyed the movie, I didn't. It got on my bad side very early on. So Will Smith plays a fighter pilot, and he's got about 50 colleagues with him as he goes on this assault against the aliens. He's the only survivor out of all these people, so he probably had like a 1 in 50 chance to come out of this alive, and he did. Fine, but meanwhile, somewhere else, his wife drives into this tunnel, and she's the only survivor out of like 100 motorists or something, so she's surviving this unlikely thing over here. Will Smith is surviving this unlikely thing over here. And the mathematician in me just thought, no, that's not acceptable. That just doesn't stack up. One of them would have died in those situations. Also, Jeff Goldblum's character in this film really annoys me. He's called David. I like Jeff Goldblum in everything apart from this. He just bugs the shit out of me in this film. And he comes out with this really annoying Deus Ex Machina towards the end to save the day. So the aliens basically kick arse all the way through this film. But then right at the end, right at the last minute, Jeff Goldblum goes, "Oh, I know, a computer virus." Boom, that's it. The aliens are finished, just like that. You know, they've got all these sophisticated warships that are like the size of countries, and some random computer virus can just finish them off. It's just shockingly bad story development. There was a really annoying kid at school who used to champion this film. He used to go on about it like, "Oh, did you see that bit where the White House got blown up? Oh, I was amazed." I was like, dude, seriously, no, I don't like this. They made a sequel a few years ago, never seen it. Maybe it was better than this, who knows. I'm not really into comedy films. I think I saw this way back in student digs years and years and years ago. I think there was a whole group of us watching the film, and I had a good time. You know, it's sort of about golf, which I do like. But like I said, I'm not really into comedy. The main thing I remember about this film is Richard Keel's little cameo part. Richard Keel played Jaws in The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker, and he pops up in this. He's got a really funny little role that he does right near the end. I enjoyed that, but the rest of the film is mostly lost in my memory. It's certainly no Caddyshack, this. So it was always going to finish near the bottom today. This film turned into a little bit of a cult hit, didn't it? And it got its own TV show quite recently, which I've not seen. Even the movie, I don't remember that well, hence why it's finished quite low down today. I mainly remember Steve Buscemi's performance in this. He's very funny. And then he gets betrayed by his buddy and thrown into a wood chipper. That just sums up some of the random stuff that happens in this film, but I can't really talk too much about Fargo because my memory of it has faded so badly over the years. But from what I can recall, I had a reasonably good time with it and then moved on. I spoke in my previous ranking video about Desperado, this idea of setting a Western in a modern town. Last Man Standing is sort of like that, but played more serious, which is probably why I've never gone back to this one in 25 years. Desperado is something that I can return to every few years. I just enjoy its sort of zany cheesiness. Last Man Standing, though, I don't know, it's just not very memorable. I recall it being fun to watch once. Bruce Willis plays a good guy, just shooting everybody in sight, and eventually he gets to Christopher Walken's villain at the end. But there's just nothing to sort of set it aside from other movies. It's one of those that you rent out, watch it, take back, and then you've forgotten the very next morning. Supposedly this is the weaker of the two Snake Plissken movies. I've not seen it since the mid to late 90s. I remember it being all right though. Although that was teenage me. Whether I would have the same opinion today, I don't know. I suspect not, because everybody on YouTube I've ever heard talk about this film has always said it's absolutely dreadful compared to the first one. I don't remember it being that much worse than the first. At some point, I'm going to do a John Carpenter review series on the channel, and then I'll finally catch up with Escape from LA for the first time in years. I think my opinion of it will probably go down at least a little bit, but we'll see. We'll see when we get there. This was one of my favourite Roald Dahl stories when I was growing up. I read Matilda when I was about 8 or 9, and I could totally get behind this character. At the time, I kind of felt like I was a male version of Matilda, but without the really high IQ, and I certainly couldn't move things with my mind. I didn't see the movie version until I was probably in my 20s, so by that stage of my life, the story didn't quite hold the same magic for me as back when I read the book. But I was at least pleased to see that the movie is quite a direct adaptation of the book. It doesn't change all that much. Danny DeVito's in there. He's very suited to this kind of movie. So yeah, I'm very happy to give my personal thumbs up to Matilda in any form, really. Novel, book, anything. It's a good story for kids. Every time I do one of these videos, there always seems to be a film that most of the world considers to be an absolute classic, but I don't. So in the past, we've had films like Speed and The Usual Suspects underachieve in terms of their ranking position with me. I think The Rock is probably today's film that fits into that category because this is quite a beloved film, I think. I like it too. I mean, the one time I watched it, I had a good time. There's some good action in it. Sean Connery is very good. Nicolas Cage is good. There are some very satisfying villain deaths, some good twists and turns throughout the movie. I just don't think it's a masterpiece like a lot of people do. I think it's a good, solid action film. Not one that I particularly love, though. If there's one thing I like more than horror movies, it's Archie Gemmell's goal for Scotland in the 1978 World Cup. This film is about a group of guys who aren't quite ready to join the serious side of life, so they go out chasing highs, but they go for the wrong ones, you know. Instead of just going out and getting into a football club or just going nightclubbing, they pursue drugs, which is probably the worst high that you can go after when you're a guy in your late teens, early 20s, and it ends up costing one of these guys their life. And the main guy in the group, played by Ewan McGregor, he just about sees the light by the end of the movie, and he gives this big speech about how you should choose life, etc., etc. It could have come across really cheesy, that speech, but it doesn't somehow. It really kind of hits home. This isn't actually that good a film, and yet somehow the memory of it makes me feel a little bit emotional, because I was of the generation who this film was aimed at, really. I was kind of 14, 15, going on 16 at the time. All I have to do is hear that Born Slippy Underworld song, and it really does bring back memories of adolescence, of growing up. So what I'm saying is that it's not that good a film, but it's actually a pretty good film in some respects. Just to be clear. This is probably the least well-known film in the ranking today. It stars Geoffrey Rush, who is probably most famous for being Barbossa in the Pirates of the Caribbean films. That franchise does a very good job of showing Rush's comic talents. This film, Shine, very much showcases the more serious side of his acting. What he does in this film is probably one of the best individual performances I've ever seen in a movie. It's absolutely stunning. So he plays the role of a pianist who... he has some kind of personality deficiency. I'm not sure what the medical term would be for what he's got, but he's definitely not completely normal, even though he's got amazing skills on the piano, and he's also got a really dodgy relationship with his father. But he makes a go of it in the piano playing industry, and he gets to the sort of top of the tree, to the point where he's playing in front of huge crowds in like these massive opera houses and stuff. But he suffers some kind of breakdown on the night of his... what should have been the pinnacle of his career. He learns one of the most difficult piano pieces there is to learn, but he has some kind of fit, and it's not really clear as to whether it's because of the complexity of the notes that he had to learn, or whether it's because of the accumulation of everything he's had to suffer in his life up to that point. The film doesn't spell everything out for you, but it's an absolutely gripping watch, this. It's not usually my sort of thing, but I just happened to watch it this one time, and I thought it was an amazing piece of cinema and a brilliant, brilliant performance from Geoffrey Rush. If you've not seen Shine, give it a watch. When I talked about Star Trek Generations a couple of videos ago, I didn't think I'd seen any of the other Patrick Stewart ones. It turns out I have seen this one as well, Star Trek First Contact. In fact, it's the only Star Trek film I've ever seen at the cinema. I wasn't really into Star Trek back then. I'm not now really, but I like it a lot more now than I did back in those days. The reason why I was at the cinema this particular day is because I was tagging along in a big group of like 12 parents and kids. It was possibly somebody's birthday, I can't remember. So once we got to the cinema, half of us branched off to watch the Star Trek film. The other half went off to watch some kind of children's animated flick, but certainly Star Trek was the pick of the two movies as far as I was concerned, but I still wasn't that excited to see it. But to my surprise, I really enjoyed it. This tale of the Borg race taking over the Enterprise had me on the edge of my seat, actually, and I really liked whoever Patrick Stewart plays in these movies. His character, the way he stands up to his crew in this film, I admired it at the time. I thought, yeah, this is pretty good drama, actually. And when I came out of the cinema, I sort of felt like I would like to go on and watch more Star Trek films. I didn't. I mean, I never ended up watching Insurrection and Nemesis. But maybe one day, I'm kind of thinking that I would like to do my own Star Trek ranking on the channel at some point this year. I've seen a lot of these films. I've not seen all of them, especially the more recent ones to come out. So I think that could be a fun little mini marathon for me. And to finish off with a rankings video would be good fun, I think. This is the only Hugh Grant film I have ever enjoyed, and the main reason for that is that this isn't a romantic comedy. Yeah, Hugh Grant once did a thriller. He plays the good guy in this. Gene Hackman is the main villain. I can't remember that much about the plot, but it's very twisty and turny, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat. I think at one point, Hackman convinces Hugh Grant that he's paralysed, but he's not. There's also a really good sequence in a train tunnel where a villain gets his leg trapped in a rail and gets brutally run over. It's a pretty good film. It's very 90s, but I definitely remember really enjoying this one. I think most people would probably rank this one lower than, say, The Rock. But for some reason, Broken Arrow has just always really done it for me. I think part of that is because Christian Slater and John Travolta are so good in it. Travolta plays a villain who steals a couple of nuclear warheads, and Christian Slater's character's got to track him down. Most people, when they think of John Travolta being cool in the movie world, think of Grease or Pulp Fiction, but he is so slick in this. He's absolutely awesome. And there's a woman in it who's quite good as well. I think it might be Samantha Morton or Samantha Mathis, somebody like that, but she's really good. The whole film is set in Utah, which makes it a very unique location for an action film. It's very well directed by John Woo. At one time, I watched this about 4 times in the space of a couple of years. I just kept going back to it and over because it's just such a good film to watch. It's just fun. It's really entertaining action and highly recommended. Definitely one of the most fun vampire films ever made. I've never seen any of the sequels. I don't particularly care to if they don't have George Clooney in them. He's absolutely fantastic in this. A career best performance from Clooney, in my opinion. The script is so witty as well. I could easily believe that Tarantino himself either wrote this or co-wrote this. It's just got his stamp all over it. I particularly like the moment, and this is going to make me sound really immature, but screw it. Particularly like the moment where the doorman to the vampire ranch house place is going, "We got raspberry pussy, we got strawberry pussy," and then the main girl walks up and he's like, "And we got apple pie pussy," and George Clooney just knocks him out. Look, I don't particularly like that many comedy films, so when I find something personally amusing to me, just let me go off on a tangent about it. When the action kicks into gear in this film, though, it's so much fun. When the characters start to die off one by one, it does hit you, and that is the mark of a really well thought out script. You've got Tom Savini in there, Harvey Keitel. It's just really, really well done. The only thing I don't like about the film is the ending, I think. I can't remember if the main girl, whether her character name is Juliet or whether the girl who plays her is called Juliet something, but I think she should have gone off with the Clooney character. That kind of stuck in the craw for me. I kind of feel like it would have been a really good arc if they'd started the film off really despising each other and then by the end gone off on this romantic cruise into Mexico, or maybe just gone off as a new kind of stepfather and daughter kind of thing. I don't know, but it just didn't seem right to me, them splitting off at the end. But apart from that, excellent film. I really love this one. Definitely one of Schwarzenegger's most underrated films, I feel. There's some great action in this. There's a really cool sequence involving a plane, and there's another one that takes place in a zoo, and some crocodiles end up eating the villains who had been chasing Schwarzenegger's character. There's a great finale at some kind of dockyard. There are also some really high-tech weapons in this which really appealed to my teenage self back in the day. James Caan plays a really great villain, and I liked his ending, actually. That whole business with the limo and the train tracks was a very satisfying finale, so count me into the Eraser fan club were such a thing to exist. I like aeroplane thrillers, and this is a good one. It stars Kurt Russell and Steven Seagal. To my surprise and my dad's, because we rented this film out together in the middle of the 90s, Steven Seagal gets killed off halfway through. We totally did not see that coming. I think it took us like 10, 15 minutes to sort of get used to the idea. We were sort of looking at each other like, is he really dead? Is he not coming back? Because that just didn't happen in any Steven Seagal film. So yeah, that was out of left field. Looking back on it now, I kind of feel like there must have been more to that situation than meets the eye, because Seagal is famously somebody with a very big ego when it comes to his movie making. So I have to think that there was some kind of deal in place with executive decision whereby if Seagal was in the movie, then he would get to go on and do maybe a whole bunch of other movies where he would be the star, something like that. It's not like he needed to do this film in the middle of the 90s. He was on top of the world around about the time that this came out. He'd only done Under Siege 2 the previous year, so yeah, there's definitely something fishy about that. But Kurt Russell carries the film very well once Seagal departs. It's a very tense thriller as they try and figure out who the bad guy is on this plane. So yeah, it was a good one, this. This came at a point of Sylvester Stallone's career where supposedly he was getting a little bit tired of just killing bad guys and terrorists all the time, so he decided to do this disaster piece about a group of people who get trapped underneath. I'm not sure where it is. I think it's somewhere in New York. It's a fairly small scale film, this, but it works more for me that than something really large and expansive like, say, Armageddon or Deep Impact. There are lots of good set pieces in this film. I don't remember enjoying this that much on first viewing when me and my dad rented it, but I've seen it now and again over the years, and it's one that gets better, I think, the more you watch it. It has to be one of the best disaster films of the 90s. It's got a good little part by Viggo Mortensen. So yeah, I really like this one. It's not one that immediately springs to mind when you think of Stallone, but it's absolutely worth a watch. This was almost a big upset. Tremors 2 literally almost got to the grand final because, to begin with, I actually wrote this down as my number 2, and then after thinking about it a little bit more, I just nudged it back into third spot. A lot of people have only seen the first Tremors film and they've never bothered with any of the sequels because of the fact that Kevin Bacon doesn't come back. But if you're one of those people, change your stance, because Tremors 2 at least is absolutely worth watching, at least if you liked the first film. It's still got Burt Ward from the first film. It's still got Burt Gummer. They work brilliantly as a sort of awkward tag team in this. I think this one takes place in Mexico. The script takes the evolution of the worms a little bit further, in the same way that James Cameron's Aliens sort of shows you a little bit more of how aliens actually work in that film. It's funny, this. It's got some good weapons in it. It's got great gore. It's just a really, really enjoyable sequel. I rented it out in the 90s, had an absolute blast with it. I've got it on DVD now as part of a 3-film combo pack, Tremors 1, 2 and 3 in the same box. So yeah, this is a really cool film, and I'm slightly sad in the end that it's not made the grand final. I think Tremors 1 also missed out on the grand final by virtue of coming third in 1990, or did it just sneak in second? Off the top of my head, I can't remember, although I've got a sneaking suspicion that we've had 2 Tremors films now that have both missed out by coming third in their respective years. I'll have to go back and check on that. But for now, let's find out which film did make it into second spot in 1996. Initially, I put this one third, and then at the last minute, after some thinking, I put it ahead of Tremors 2. You'll have to let me know if you think I was right. This is one of the most unique series in cinema history, really. It's been going 25 years now. It's still going, still with the same actor in the lead role. That's just absolutely incredible. The longevity of Tom Cruise is just staggering. I feel like I have a personal connection to this franchise because I've been there since the very beginning. I didn't see the original at the cinema, but we did rent it out as soon as it was available on home release, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's got a different feel to it, this first one. It doesn't have the big mega stunts that a lot of the later films do. It's very stealthy. It's got a lot of down-to-earth sort of spy work. There's a proper mystery feel to it almost. The first 20 minutes, you don't know what's going on. Ethan Hunt's team's being picked off in Prague. It's all mysterious. You do get some interesting set pieces later on. There's the famous one where Ethan Hunt's dangling down on the wire and there's all the laser beams, and there's stuff to do with the train later on. That's a really good sequence as well. This is still probably one of the best films in the franchise. I would not hold it against anybody who actually thought that this was the best of them all. It could be that you just prefer this style of movie to the sort of Mission Impossible film that comes later on. I'd really like to do a ranking of this series as well. It's just, at this stage, with Mission Impossible 7 and 8 just around the corner, I don't really have the motivation to do a 6-film ranking, if you see what I mean, but certainly on a future day I will do a video where I rank all 8 films when they're finally released. Surely Tom Cruise won't go past number 8, but I wouldn't put it past him, although he's, what, 60 now, coming up to that. So yeah, it was very close between Tremors 2 and the original Mission Impossible. I've just gone for Mission Impossible, and it wouldn't surprise me if more Mission Impossible films get through to the grand final. There was only ever going to be one winner, though, for this particular year, and it's Scream, an absolute classic, a masterpiece. This is another franchise where I've been there since the very beginning, and I think this film could do very well in the eventual grand final. The story of how I first saw this is quite amusing. So I think it was Christmas '96, and I got given £20 worth of Boots vouchers as a present. I can't remember who I got them off, but at first I was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. If you're not from the UK, let me tell you that Boots is a store where you can get things like perfumes, deodorants, lipsticks. It's that kind of place. You know, it's not an exciting store for someone who's 15, 16 years old, but it just so happens that around about that time, I think Boots were experimenting in selling films as kind of a little sideline. So they just have this small section of the shelf where they sell the latest films. A lot of stores experiment with this from time to time. I don't think Boots have done it for a long, long time. I can't remember the last time I went into a Boots and saw films on sale on any of their shelves. So I think I just got lucky at this particular time period. So I went to Boots with my vouchers and I was able to pick up Scream on VHS and GoldenEye on VHS, £10 each, 2 films I'd not seen before, 2 absolute classics. I think I might have watched Scream first out of the 2 of them, and I was just blown away by it. I got all the meta stuff in it because I'd been watching slasher films non-stop for like the 3 or 4 years leading up to Scream, so it was right in my ballpark. I absolutely loved it. The following year when Scream 2 came out, I persuaded my dad to take me to go and see the second one. It's just a great, great film, and for me, easily the best film in 1996. So that's the end of today's video. I normally do a little section at the end where I tell you what films from a given year I regret having not seen, but I'm not going to do that today because literally I couldn't find a single film on the 96 wiki lists that did make me think, oh, I wish I'd seen that. Why have I never seen that? So this is going to be one of those rare videos where I just end after I've done the number 1, and I'll be back soon with a rankings for 1997. So I will bid you adieu. I will quickly say that I've had a sneaky peek at what is in 97, and I think that we're going to be back up to a 25 film haul for that particular year. It's an absolutely stacked year, is 97. So until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.